Great day, beloved. Great day, and welcome to another episode of Connecting the Source with Rev Stephon. I am your host, Rev Stephon. So welcome. If this is your first episode, I thank you for tuning in. I really do. Thank you for tuning in. Please go and look at the earlier episodes. I think that they will definitely help to build a foundation for you, a spiritual foundation for biblical scripture. And, maybe answer some questions that you may have been struggling with, okay? So, for those that, have tuned in, that follow, that subscribe, welcome back. Okay, so you know how we do. We want to make sure that we have sacred space, that we create a safe container for our time together. And then you know how to do it if you've been here before. But for those who haven't, what we do is we center ourselves, concentrate on our breathing, opening up our third eye, which is the pineal gland. And what that means is the face of God. So when we center ourselves, we quiet so we can hear from source, so we can connect with source. We open up our third eye so that we connect with the divinity in us, and that divinity connects with the ultimate divinity source, or God. Okay, so I want you to make sure that you are in a place where you're comfortable. You can be lying down. You could be sitting up, but make sure that your spine is erect, okay? It's just straight, but not stiff, not stiff. I want you to be relaxed. I want you to relax, okay? And close your eyes. Concentrate on your breathing. Take in a deep breath. Take it in through your nose. On the 4 count, breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 2 count. And breathe out through your mouth slowly on the 6 count, okay? Right? Make sure that you are expanding your diaphragm, that you are getting a full, deep breath. Because we want to slow down, right? Slow down your thinking, your thoughts, your consciousness. We want to make sure that we, are relaxed. Relax, breathing. Take another deep breath in. Do the same thing. Know that this is sacred space. Know that you are in a safe container, that this is holy ground. Our time together is holy ground, okay? Do it once again. As you regulate your breathing and you concentrate on your breathing, I want you to imagine a glowing light in the middle of your forehead. That is your pineal gland, all right? You're going to open it up. Sometimes we have to decalcify it, right? Continue to breathe, right? Control breaths. See that bright light. Feel it surround you. Feel the warmth of it. Feel the presence. Remember, this is the face of God. More and more relax and understand that you are in a safe space, that you are surrounded by divine light, that you are seeing the face of God. You are connecting with source. One more deep breath in and breathe out slowly. Again, welcome to Connecting with Source with Rev Stephon. This is episode 8. This is episode 8 of season 3, And we are, dealing with Moses. We're dealing with the mixed multitude that has come out of Egypt. We, have been dealing with the wilderness journeys, the tabernacle, the priestly garments, and the complaints, right? The complaints. So this episode is the rebellion of Korah, the rebellion of Korah, Korah, Korah. This is divine authority and spiritual pride. Divine authority and spiritual pride, okay? So our scriptural context is found in Numbers 16, right? Number 16, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram challenged Moses and Aaron's divine appointment. right? Whenever you are, you're going to get challenged. You get challenged anyway, but definitely if you are in a place of authority, you're in a place of authority, and not just, any type of authority, but divine authority. It was a divine appointment. Okay, a divine appointment. You're going to find people that are going to rise up against you and rebel. Right, rebel, thinking that they, why, because they're thinking why you and not them, basically. So they rise up, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. They rise up claiming equality in spiritual authority, right? They're saying, "Oh, we're just as good. We're just as good." It's basically, jealousy, right? So this rebellion reveals the tension between democratic impulses and divine order. So it is ultimately, it results in earth swallowing judgment that validates authentic spiritual leadership. I want you to remember that. Ultimately, this results in earth swallowing judgment that validates authentic spiritual leadership. Okay, some of the spiritual connections with our primary verse, which is number 16, primary scripture. Scripture connections are Numbers 26, 9 through 11, where it deals with the long-term consequences and the memorial. Jude 1:11, the way of Cain, the era of Balaam, and rebellion of Korah. 2 Timothy 2:19, the Lord knows those who are his, right? These are the overwhelming message in those scriptures. In 2 Timothy 2:19, in overwhelming, the context is the Lord knows who are his. Okay. Romans 13:1, divine appointment of authority. This is the theme or context of that scripture. Okay, the context of that scripture and how it connects. Right, the connection is God knows who He has called to divine authority. You don't have to worry about it. So historical context, the ancient leadership and authority structures that we find in antiquity, there is tribal leadership patterns in nomadic societies. These were nomads. They came into this wilderness experience, and they're basically nomads, but they weren't the first. And they're in history in that region are these tribes and these nomadic tribes. Okay, religious authority systems in the ancient Near East. So there are these religious systems that have an authority or a how can you say, a hierarchy, right? There are people who are appointed as priests and chief priests and, ultimate authority in those systems. Divine kingship concepts and priestly authority. So that the reason why that you have this position of king is because it was God's will, or is God's will, right? And then there's always been challenges to establish leadership in transitional periods. So in any time that there is a transition, anytime that people are facing something new, then they begin to wonder, if, this is the right person or persons to lead us through this transition. And then community decision making versus appointed authority, right? The people. Right, the people come together. People begin to talk. People begin to question, as a community, as a group, and then they begin, to to question, right? Right. It they're saying, well, hey, this is the majority. This is what we have come. This is the conclusion. This is what we think, right? And we're more than you are in numbers, basically. So, these are some of the historical context when in this scripture during this time. We always want to make sure, so it helps us to understand that we have to have a firm understanding of the context, historical context, right? What was going on during that time, also cultural context, so that we can get a firm understanding, and it allows us to be able to determine those things, that can be applied to our present situation. Okay. The rebellion occurred during a period of transition where traditional tribal authority structures were being replaced by divinely appointed leadership. Right. Basically, they felt like they had no say so. Right. And this created natural tension between the familiar and the new authority patterns. Right. the new authority patterns, and we're going to see that as we get to the Ten Commandments, and some other things where people fall back to their familiar. Right, it happens in our own lives. We face something new, tension, whatever it is, some stressor, then we fall back into our familiar. Right. Our familiar. The Levitical tribe and priestly distinction. The Levites chosen for temple service, but not all for priesthood. Okay, they were all chosen. The Levites are all chosen for temple service, but not all for priesthood. Aaron's family specifically chosen for the priestly function. Right. The distinction between the general calling and specific authority. Right. You have specific. The priest had specific authority. Specific authority. The tribe of Levi had this general calling to serve. The priestly. The priestly not the priestly function themselves, but in that temple, the rights, those things that that God would impart on the priests themselves. Okay, so they served them. Those that were not priests themselves, they were still part of that lineage on the tribe of Levi. Let's see. Hereditary versus merit-based spiritual leadership. Okay. Again, this is the inheritance of Levi. The tribe of Levi. Divine selection versus human qualification. So we all may feel like we are qualified. We may feel like we're qualified, but the divine appointment, being divinely selected for specific leadership or specific position, right, or specific work, that divine appointment supersedes the human qualification. Okay? The human qualification, because the divine selection is more connected to the gifting, not the skill set, but the gifting. Okay? Hope that makes sense. So the nature of Korah's challenge, equal calling claim. This is the nature of Korah's challenge. All the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? This is in Numbers 16:3. Korah's argument sounds spiritually democratic. Right? It sounds good. Right? You ever seen those people? I heard those people who quote the Bible, and they sound like, it sounds good, but there's other motives. Okay. Excuse me a moment. So it sounds good, right? It sounds spiritually democratic, but misunderstands the difference between universal holiness and a specific calling. All right. So this represents how spiritual pride often disguises itself as spiritual equality. Okay. So, there's a mixture of truth and error. Korah's statement contained truth. The congregation is holy, but the wrong application. The wrong application. And this is one of the reasons why I started the podcast, is because those same people who quote scripture sound good, it is the wrong application of the scripture. Okay. So this was the wrong application. Therefore, no one has special calling. See, this teaches how dangerous spiritual rebellion often contains enough truth to sound reasonable while fundamentally opposing divine authority or divine order. Okay. Personal ambition disguised as concern. Though claiming to represent the people's interest, Korah sought the priesthood for himself. You can see that in Numbers 16:10. Again, it sounds good, but there's an ulterior motive. So this reveals how spiritual rebellion often masks personal ambition with religious concerns for others. It's the true wolf in sheep's clothing. Rejection of divine appointment. The core issue wasn't human preference, but divine selection. Really jealousy, right? Moses and Aaron were God's chosen leaders, not self-appointed authority, because we know how Moses really, he just really wasn't, he definitely didn't call himself to this, right? Because he had so many excuses. But anyway, this represents the spiritual challenge of accepting divine order rather than preferring democratic spiritual authority. And, I know in, just trying to, come to grips with answering my calling to ministry. Okay. So the divine response and validation tests the legitimacy. Tomorrow morning, the Lord will show who is his and who is holy. The one whom he chooses will bring near to him. This is Numbers 16:5. Divine authority proves itself through divine validation rather than human vote or popular opinion or appeal. Okay? And then the earth opening judgment. The earth opening judgment. I told we'd get to this, right? the dramatic punishment where the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them. Numbers 16:32 demonstrates how serious rebellion against divine order can become. How serious rebellion against divine authority, divine order can become. Right? This demonstrates how it can happen. This represents consciousness that completely separates itself from divine flow and spiritual community. This is ego. This is where ego really comes into place, because this is the consciousness, this part of the consciousness that completely separates itself from divine flow. Okay, of fire-consuming offerings, the 250 men offering incense were consumed by divine fire, showing how presumptuous spiritual service, offering what wasn't requested, right? You just, it was presumptuous, right? You jump into your own and move into your own inclinations, right? It wasn't even asked for, right? What wasn't requested by unqualified people? You weren't even qualified to bring the message. Weren't even qualified, right, to make the offering or the sacrifice or even the prayer, right? This can be spiritually dangerous rather than merely ineffective. Okay, so this is where is somebody who is praying, who and their prayer is not answered. The prayer, they can't get their own personal prayer to be answered. Then they're trying to pray for you. Okay, it's not merely dangerous, right? Right? It's spiritually dangerous, but it's also ineffective. Uh, Bronze censers as memorial. The censers were hammered into altar covering as a sign of the people of Israel, so that no outsider who is not of the descendants of Aaron should draw near to burn incense before the Lord. Right? They were unqualified. Even it was a lot, but they were unqualified. Only the descendants of Aaron are qualified, right, to burn incense before the Lord. That's Numbers 16:40. This is a permanent reminder of divine order and calling specificity. Okay. The lessons of a spiritual, what lessons? Lessons for spiritual authority. Recognizing legitimate spiritual leadership, learning to discern between authentic divine calling and human ambition in spiritual leaders. Okay. No, I'm not going to do it. But there's some folk, right? There's some folk who are claiming. There's some folk who tie themselves to, some people who have spiritual authority. And because they're tied to them, believe that gives them spiritual authority. But behind that is some other ambition. And I know that you probably know some, right? You've probably seen they're prominent. Prominent. They're laying hands on people and saying that certain people are godly people that, you know right away that are not. So I'll just leave it there, right? So just learning to discern between authentic divine calling and human ambition in spiritual leaders. Understanding that divine authority manifests through fruit, character, and divine validation rather than self-promotion. And if that is not a clue, right? Submitting to divine order, accepting that spiritual authority isn't democratic, but divine appointment, while maintaining healthy discernment between legitimate authority, and spiritual abuse or false claims to divine calling. Sit and marinate, right? Sit and marinate. All right. And then examining personal motives. Korah's rebellion reveals how spiritual pride can disguise itself as concern for others or democratic principles, teaching the importance of honest self-examination regarding our responses to spiritual authority. Your heart is going to tell you. Your heart is going to let you know that you're going to have a gut feeling, right? And the gut is people have now found that the gut is pretty much the second brain. And right, then your heart center, your heart knows, That's it began that conscious, that, now your conscious is like, okay, wait a minute. But sometimes we follow the crowd. And then understanding spiritual calling, recognizing that universal holiness doesn't eliminate specific calling, right? Universal holiness doesn't eliminate specific calling. If you know that we are, ministers. Okay, we're just doing that. We're all ministers, but some have been called to other posts, other specific places, other specific. There are those who are priests and those who are pastors, those who are who can rightly divide the word, that are prophets. There is so many others, right? So, you want to recognize that universal holiness. Because we all contain, or we are have the temple where source dwells, it doesn't eliminate specific calling, and that divine gifts and authority are distributed according to divine wisdom rather than human preference or demand. Human preference or demand. Oh my goodness, I've seen such a wow, such a growth in the number of people saying that they are this or they're that. I'll just leave it right there. I was going to say a specific thing, but I'm not. I also, when, you need to divinely be quiet. So we always want to make sure that this is practical, right? So what is our practice guide for this episode, for this lesson? Authority discernment exercise. You want to, just like anything that you want to grow and get stronger, your discernment, right? Your ability to discern whether someone was divinely called, divinely appointed, rather than somebody that's self-promoting, right? You want to recognize legitimate spiritual leadership. You want to be able to do that. So you exercise that discernment. You make sure that you are meditating, that you are opening yourself up, that you are connecting, with source, connecting with the divine in you, and your soul will speak. Your gut feeling will get so strong. Okay. And then pride examination practice. Because we all have this thing where, pride can, rise up. Pride can get in the way, ego can take over. So you want to honestly, assess personal spiritual ambitions in yourself. You want to be honest about it. Okay. Just because somebody says that, hey, that they see something on you and something about you, you want to make sure that you do an honest assessment and an examination. Divine order meditation. Again, and these pillars, right? These pillars that I stand on, whether I do this podcast, whether I do Eden Life Live, those things that, have been an offshoot of Eden Life Ministries, have been built upon three pillars that were divinely given. As I, just went into study, went into just really being open, and then connecting to something I had denied for most of my adult life. And so it was these three pillars: meditation, metaphysics, and manifestation. So this divine order meditation, understanding your place in the spiritual community. Not only are you meditating so you can discern whether, this person or persons have been divinely selected, but you also want to meditate so you can understand your place in this spiritual community. Okay? And then you want to have this balance between submission and discernment. The submission and discernment balance, a healthy response to spiritual authority. Right? If it's not you, and you have discerned that this is spiritual authority, okay, then you must always maintain a healthy response, right? And healthy interaction to the divine authority, to the spiritual authority. Okay? All right. So I hope that you are understanding that. So as we come to a close, we want to close with a meditation. Remember, we know how to do it, to make sure that we are, back in a comfortable position, that we are controlling our breath, that we're taking those 3 deep breaths, right? We want to take in those things that are positive, those are good. Even the discernment, being able to discern, want to take that in, right? And go ahead and take that breath in, right? Take that breath in. Center into divine order consciousness. Breathe out. Feel legitimate spiritual authority. That deep breath in. Release rebellious pride patterns. Deep breath out. Embrace divine calling and placement. One more deep breath in. All right, let it out. So this week, examine your responses to a spiritual authority. Practice discernment between legitimate and false spiritual leadership. Release any hidden spiritual pride or ambition, and embrace your authentic divine calling and placement. We all have a place in this spiritual community. Okay? We all have a place. So until next week, remember, divine authority serves divine purpose, spiritual pride opposing spiritual progress. You are always connecting the source. Remember, empower your purpose, embrace your journey, and witness the extraordinary unfold. Peace, love, and light, beloved. Peace, love, and light.